Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe of Unicorns. I'm your host, Kendra Beavis, and I want to talk to the people that feel like everything looks good on paper, but there's still something inside that's not quite right. You maybe spent years performing and people pleasing and overgiving and shrinking yourself, and you are so done but don't know where to go from here. Today we're talking with Angie Hawkins. She is an inner glow coach and she helps women stop chasing love and approval outside of themselves and find it within. She also just released her brand new masterclass, From People Pleaser to Powerhouse. So listen in because we're talking intuition, boundaries, blind spots, worthiness. How do you even recognize a blind spot if you can't see it? All right, there's so much to cover here, so let's get started. Hey, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Kendra? Thank you for having me.
Good, good. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. Where are you? It looks kind of tropical.
Yeah, I live in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Ah, amazing. What is the weather there right now?
Um, it's sunny. The temperature really only ranges like 10 degrees. So it's weird because I used to be really obsessed with the weather and monitoring the weather, but you really don't have
Yeah.
to do that here. I'm more obsessed with monitoring the surf report, so I could probably tell you
Oh,
what the ocean is doing.
how do you describe yourself? Because you say you're an inner glow coach, but what does that mean?
So it basically means self-love because when you don't have that internal source of self-worth and self-love, you're looking for it in things outside of yourself. And I actually, when I very first started coaching full-time, I called myself a self-love coach, but I'm like, man, that sounds so boring and generic. And I called my coaching program Shine from the Inside. It's actually still called that because it's based on this concept of we're all born with this light inside of us. Because when you see kids, they're like running around, screaming, their clothes are dirty, like they do not give a shit about what anyone
Mm-hmm.
thinks. And then as we move along life, like society or family systems, like tell us what we should or should not be doing, and it slowly starts to dim our light. So, for me, through my own personal journey, when I started rekindling that light and truly started loving myself and having that internal source of self worth, it literally felt like this warm energy in my chest. And like beyond that, people would say to me, like, oh, you're glowing. So it's like the sun in your chest and it's radiating outward. And I call that an inner glow. And I don't know if I coined that term or not, but I started calling myself the inner glow coach because it's like that's what it feels like. And I felt like that embodies more of what I'm doing than just like generic self love.
Self-love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. When I saw it, it just made me smile.
Oh, good.
Gives so much more of a description of what you're going to experience as a transformation more than just self-love.
And that's what I was going for. So thank you. And I remember when I first made the change, everyone was like, oh, yeah, that sounds so much better. And I was like, whew.
Yeah. So, how did you come to this place? You were talking about living in Chicago. You were talking about, experiencing some of this yourself. Tell me about that journey.
So it started in my childhood. I grew up in a home. The best way to describe it is both of my parents were extremely emotionally unavailable. And as an adult, I understand what that means and I know why they were the way they were. But as a child, you just don't have those tools or the knowledge to be able to interpret it that way. So the way I interpreted the situation was that I developed a belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. Be aware your beliefs dictate your behaviors, and then that's what draws in certain experiences in your life. So I struggled for a very long time in my life because I was a people pleaser, because I didn't have that internal source of my self-worth. I was always, reaching for my worth in things outside of myself. I was an overachiever. I had to get straight A's in school or else it would destroy me if I didn't. I was always the overachiever at work. I would, like for a long time, I was running marathons. And if I didn't keep doing better, again, because that was my source of worth, it would just like crush me if I didn't make my goals. So, and it's just a really exhausting way to live. And I knew I wasn't happy. I knew I wasn't fulfilled, but I really didn't know a different way to live. And also because my self-worth was so low, I honestly didn't believe I deserved anything more. So I just kept moving through life like that. And the first breakthrough came in 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away. And
Oh,
I was 37, and for 37 years, I had been running away from all of my feelings and repressing my feelings. But the grief was so profound that it was impossible to avoid my feelings. So I basically spent the rest of the year feeling like shit and not really doing anything about it because I didn't know emotional regulation. And again, I think there was this feeling of I don't think I'm deserving of anything better. But
right.
luckily, when at the beginning of 2018, decided I was like, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I was like, I want to be happy. I want to have a better life. So I was living in Chicago and I decided to move to Hawaii because I had always wanted to live here. And I do think it was well intentioned in the sense that I was like finally taking agency over my life and proactively doing something to live a happier life. But it wasn't well intentioned in the sense that I was still looking for something outside of myself to be the thing that made me feel better. It's like, oh, if I move, then I'll feel better. Spoiler alert, that is not the case because you can't move away from your problems. So I moved here and I would still behave. I had the same beliefs, I had the same behavior. So I was like attracting in the same things. And not only that, I developed a whole new host of problems because this was in 2018. So it was before remote work was the trendy thing to do. But I was very fortunate. My job allowed me to move here and keep my job. But at the exact same time that I moved, there was this huge management shakeup that threatened my role. So the first year that I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. And I also had a really hard time making friends, which was something that I had never experienced in Chicago. So being thousands of miles away from anyone I knew, it was just really lonely and isolating not to have any friends for a long time. And then the other
Right.
major thing that happened right off the bat was to prove how all in and committed I was to my decision. I bought a new condo several months after I moved. So it was like pretty immediate. So, like, on top of this huge move, I'm like, oh, let's just buy a home too. And like a month after I closed on my condo, a shared building pipe backflowed into my bathroom sink and I wasn't home. So the entire condo flooded. And then the next 2.5 years was just like thing after thing after thing. And because I was looking for things outside of myself to be my stability and everything was falling apart, my internal world really started unraveling. And that it was like a 2.5 year period. Because then COVID happened and I don't think I have
No.
the camel's back was the end of a relationship during COVID. And I just had this moment, and I think we all have these moments where I was just like, I can't take this anymore because it was just like I had enough. But layered on top of that was this sheer feeling of hopelessness because
Ugh,
nothing had been going well. And I truly could not see any hope for the future, which is such a dangerous place to be.
yeah.
So I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety
Oh,
medication and I spent a day and a half unconscious in my bathroom. I spent another day and a half
wow.
in the hospital. And when I was released from the hospital, I called a friend and I told her everything that happened. And I ended with, I can't believe I didn't die. And her response was, it's not your time. And that was so profound and honestly, like exactly what I needed to hear because I was kind of at a crossroads because I felt worse than I did before I took the pills. And I just still had that feeling. I remember I just kept repeating in my head, like, I don't want to be here. And I was kind of pissed off that,
Yeah.
things didn't go the way I thought they were going to go. But when she said that to me, I was like, I think I have a purpose. And that's what motivated me to actually turn my life around and get help the right way.
Wow. That's
Yeah, that is a lot. And that's just the Cliff Notes version. Like there's so much more.
right. I mean, it's incredible that, you recognized there was a way to climb out of where your headspace was. And I think, searching for purpose and realizing that you're here for a reason is such an incredible like foothold to keep you moving forward. How then did you take that and turn it into your service?
So it was a process from there, but the very first step I took because I it was that sense of like I think I have a purpose and that's what was really motivating me. And I had tried traditional therapy and it hadn't worked for me. So I decided I'm going to invest in myself and hire a coach. So I hired a coach, and the work I did with him truly saved my life because, like, that was the kind of help that I really needed to turn around a lot of the negative beliefs that I had in my head.
Yeah.
In addition to that, because, changing takes time. And in those initial like weeks and months after I got out of the hospital, like it was a struggle just to make it through the day. So I was like, I need something to anchor me in my day to day while I'm going through these changes. So after my dad died, I had this idea because I was in such profound grief and we live in a just get over it society. So after like 2 months, people like they didn't want to talk about it anymore. They were like, why are you still sad?
Right.
It was like grieving was like this weird thing. So for the rest of that year, I was kind of like jaded by society because you go on Instagram and it's all the highlight reels and everything's perfect. And even in real life, a lot of the times we're wearing like the everything is okay mask.
Right.
So in my mind, I was like, there have to be other people going through shitty things. And why aren't we talking about it? So I had this idea to write a memoir and like just basically talk about all the shitty things that I had been through to get people talking about it. And so fast forward to when I was working on the coach and I needed something more like day to day. That's when I decided to write my book because I was like, because especially in that moment, I'm like, I know there's other people going through like severe mental health issues. I know there's other
Yeah.
people who have been through what I've been through. So like, let's start talking about it. So in the day to day, like I just started working on my book and I ended up publishing that in 2022.
Wow.
And through the work with my coach, because I was working in corporate America, as I became more aligned with who I am as a person, because I basically had no identity before because I was such a people pleaser. I was living for other people. But by doing the work with him and having that internal source of validation, I started to know my identity. And I slowly started realizing that I wasn't aligned with corporate America. And I would love to say that like I quit right then and like started
Yeah.
coaching, but I was addicted to like it was a nice paycheck. I had the benefits.
Sure.
Also, at that time, I valued stability over my mental health. And so that continued on
And
for,
it's scary.
oh, it's very scary. But then I was transferred to another team that was horrible. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, this is my sign to
yeah.
go. And I knew it was coming. I was too afraid to make the jump, but I'm like, this is the universe forcing me to make the jump. So that was like the final push into like full-time coaching and promoting my book and all of that stuff.
So that was 2022 that your book came out. Even like 2018, you're right. Nobody talked about mental health, not very openly, at least. It's a little more prevalent now, I feel,
No,
because of
agree.
COVID.
Because
But
even on Instagram, I see a lot of accounts talking about grief. Trust me, that
yeah,
was absolutely not a thing in 2017. Like, even
yeah.
on Google, all you could find was, what is it, the 5 stages of grief, which
Hmm.
unless you're, like, literally moving through them, it didn't make sense to me. I thought it was
Right.
garbage, but that was,
Yeah.
like, the only information you could find. Like, "Oh, these are the 5 stages," and I guess people will just expect you to move through those in about 2 months and then be over
Right,
it.
right, right. As quickly as possible,
Yeah.
because nobody has time or patience for self growth.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I absolutely feel like we're talking about it more, which is amazing.
How did your book help open that avenue door for you?
Well, first of all, it was so crazy because, vulnerability works the opposite way that we think it does. Because I was actually terrified to publish it because it's like my worst mistakes are in that book. It's even like, it was cringy for me because I had started working with my coach as I was writing it. And like the more healing I did, like the more cringier
Yeah.
it
You
became.
look back at chapter 1 and you're like, "Oh, that girl."
Yes, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing." But I published it, and the amount of people, and I'm talking even complete strangers who reached out to me and were like, "Oh, this exact same thing happened to me," or like, "This happened to me." And it just like validated that we all are going through these same experiences. The only criticism I received, one person criticized the title because it's called Running in Slippers, which in Hawaii we call flip flop slippers. And the cover of the book is a foot in flip flops. And they were like, I don't understand why there's flip flops on the cover. So I'm like, and also I explain the title of the book in the very first sentence of the book. So they clearly didn't even read it.
Yeah, they skipped it.
And then the other criticism that I remember written, because some people have left 1-star reviews, but they don't leave like written
Right.
reviews. But
Actual.
Yeah, but one, and I don't even think it was a 1 star, I think it was 2 star. It was like it just said that it was boring, and in all fairness, I respect that because if you haven't gone through a lot of shit in your life or you repress your feelings, like writing about grief or like these experiences that
Yeah.
I've been through, I could see how that would feel boring to someone. So it just wasn't the book for them.
Yeah. I think that's, somebody that's maybe not ready to do that kind of work
Yeah.
also, and it landed in their lap,
Yeah.
you know, that could feel like I don't need to know any of this. I don't want to know any of this. Even the conversation around alignment or having the permission to structure your life around who you really are is, I feel like, a much newer concept than it was even 5 years ago.
Well, for sure. And I still feel like there's so many people who aren't familiar with that because that's like part of my
Or don't believe it's possible.
Yeah, because that's actually part of my coaching program. We make our own rules for life because think about it, the rules of society, they're just arbitrary rules. Like who made it up, you know? And
I
we're all
know.
just blindly following it. So it's like, why not just follow your own rules for life?
Yeah.
That's what I
There's
do.
so many examples of it now too, and I think with social media, one of the positive sides of it is you see that. Like one of my favorite creators, she moved to Italy and she started like randomly met this guy, but she just totally picked up her whole life. And then, like, this very chance encounter, he ends up being her husband in the future. Now she guides people in tours. And like, this was always, such a dream of hers to have that experience and live there. And now here she is doing it. And like, traditionally, that's not something you go to college for. That's not,
Yeah.
something you put on your career path in high school when they ask you what you want to be. So I think it's incredible to have these examples of alternative lifestyles based on who you really are at your core, and having people that like you who help you discover that, because it's not easy.
No, and especially like I don't even know who that is, but I really admire her because going through some of these changes on my own, you don't get support when you make difficult decisions that go against the grain of society. So not only is it difficult, you are not supported at all, and that makes
No,
it
you get
even harder.
criticism.
Yeah, so
And
I
I think
think
it's
that's
fear
amazing.
too, depending
Oh,
who it's
yeah.
coming from. Like, I've made decisions in my life, like when I decided to quit my job in New York City and, go out on my own as a young graphic designer. My parents were like, "What are you
Yeah.
thinking? What about the benefits? Like, this is the worst decision." I mean, they were so supportive, but, at the same time, absolutely petrified that I was going to fall flat on my face. But I
Yeah,
didn't.
I think some of it is well-meaning, and it is fear-based.
Yeah. Or even the other one I got sober actually yesterday, 10 years.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you. But I remember the weirdest thing when I told people that I wasn't drinking anymore. One of the most common responses was, "Well, I don't have a problem." And I was like, "Well, I didn't say you did." So
Yeah.
there's always like this mirror thing that's happening when somebody sees you make a change. It's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, even when I was writing my book in the process, a good friend at the time, we're not friends anymore. Unfortunately, this is not the reason, but it was a huge red flag that I probably should have taken as a reason. But, it wasn't always like all sunshine and unicorns. Like I would go through rough patches. And I remember we were taking a walk one day and I was going through a rough patch in the book writing process. And I was telling her about it. And her response was, "Well, I don't know why you don't just quit." And yeah, I was like, Excuse me?" So,
Wow.
but
Yeah, what was she thinking in her head that she
well,
was upset that she did quit maybe?
and I remember this is when I was working with my coach and I talked to him about it. And his immediate response was, "That's exactly what she would have told herself if she was in your
Right.
position." So
Yeah.
yeah. And that's another thing I've really learned that has improved my quality of life is not to take things personally because a lot of
Mhm.
times it is people projecting on you.
Absolutely. I think that's a hard part of, there's so many things that you don't think about when you're kind of redefining who you are, re-meeting yourself. And one of them is the circle that you surround yourself with. It might shift a little once you kind of get to a new place that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I
You've
actually
experienced that, obviously.
my content this week is based on that theme because I used to surround myself like, so for example, that friend, I had other people in my circle who were that unloving and unsupportive, and I was depressed and anxious all the time. And then as I went through my growth journey, I and I so that friend I actually ended up because some people just fade away as you
Right.
grow, But that one, I actually had to intentionally break off that friendship because it was becoming really bad. And it's not easy, but once you surround yourself with people who are on your same like frequency and vibe and supporting and loving, it totally changes your mental health too, and basically everything in your
Absolutely.
life. Yeah.
Well, and you start to attract those people into your circle. So, as hard as it is to maybe pause other relationships or let them fade a little bit, these other things, these other people that are coming into your space, it just is so inspiring and exciting to see and meet people that are like minded and are growth oriented, and you kind of vibe on the same level.
Yeah, and I that was really reflected back to me when I quit my corporate job because there were a lot of people who are like, "You are insane, don't do that." But the friends that I have here, they were all excited because they knew how miserable I was in my corporate job,
Yeah.
and they were so happy for me because they could tell. Like, people would tell me, like, "I can tell you're happy or you're glowing," whatever, and to them, that was more important than my paycheck or whatever. And that's when I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, these are the right people."
So, is glow a method, or how do you work with people?
Yes. So I actually have, I call it the GLOW method, which is an acronym. And G stands for go back to your childhood because all of our behavior patterns or our beliefs are all rooted in something that happened in our childhood. So, to create lasting change, you have to figure out what that is because anything else is just a band aid solution that's only going to stick short term. So, that is
Right.
the very first step in the method. L stands for light yourself up because, again, change takes time, but there are super quick wins that you can get right away. And you could immediately start rekindling that light. Because, for example, if I ask someone, like, what did you do when you were 6 years old that really lit you up? Some people are so disconnected from their life, they don't remember, which is fine because we can dig into that. But other people are like, oh, I love to paint. I love to do this. I love to do that. And then they can immediately just get back into doing that. And my number one philosophy in my program is do at least one thing a day that brings you joy. And that starts rekindling your light immediately.
I
O
love that one.
yeah, O stands for overcome external validation because again, when you're giving away your power to other people, it's just chipping away your self-worth and decreasing your internal source of worth. But when you're so grounded in who you are and your own self-worth, like bombs could be going off and it doesn't like that's a little extreme. But like it's like anything can be going
Yeah.
on outside of you and that doesn't mean that you aren't worried about it or sad or angry, but it means you're so grounded in who you are that it doesn't derail your entire life. And then
Yeah.
W stands for welcome yourself back home because I feel like a lot of self help is the message is like you need to fix yourself or change yourself. But it's really just about coming back to your light. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about welcoming yourself back home.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, every episode I do with people, it's just hilarious because so many of the themes are like literally what I'm writing about or experiencing or just
Yeah.
talk to somebody else. It cracks me up. The, I always talk about your 5-year-old self. Maybe it was 7. I was recording a fake radio show on my Casio recorder. And then here we are, how many years later, and I have had my podcast since 2020.
No, when I was 6, I had a Hawaii Barbie that had ridiculously long hair, and I was so fascinated by that. So I wanted to move to Hawaii since I was 6. And also, I had a red Barbie Ferrari convertible. So I always wanted a red convertible, and now I have a red convertible. It's not a Ferrari, but it is a red convertible. But yeah, so it works both ways though, because your limiting beliefs start in your early childhood. But that's also when 'cause again, like, you're so in tune to your desires and who you are and what you want. So I think the good things also follow that path through your
Develop.
life.
Yeah, and you're right, like, a lot of the things that happen and they could be so small when you're that age, they really stick, and
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people connect the 2, like, why do I have an eating disorder at this age in my life? Well, when I was a kid, I remember very vividly my pediatrician telling my mother that she needs to lose weight, and I was probably 5.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, they just unless you look back and figure out where that root came from, and it could be a lot of different messaging, but, can never really release yourself from it.
No, agree. 'Cause
So I Go ahead, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, it's like a lot of I'm glad that you brought that up because when you reprogram your beliefs, that doesn't mean like the triggers never come up or like the old
No.
beliefs never come up. It just means that you have a different program that you're running on that can switch when, switch to the new belief once that old belief comes up. So I don't think they ever go away because I actually did
No.
have an eating disorder for a long time and it's not as bad, but I don't think I'll ever not think about food. And I
Right.
just had to come to accept that because it's like, I don't think this is a thing that's ever going to go away. It's just something that I live with and make friends with and manage.
Yeah. I think you can just sort of change your perspective and how you work with it.
Yeah,
Where I used to let it like run my life. Now
exactly.
it's acknowledged and I recognize when I let it get too far, but I also look at it, how can I get the same feelings that I was getting, because my triggers were like stress and anxiety and
Yeah,
like instantly I'd start eating something. And now when I recognize that urge to eat something in, a difficult conversation on the phone or whatever, and then okay, if I still really need to scratch that itch, maybe, I have tons of roasted vegetables and butternut squash soup in the fridge. So, do I need to do that? Am I actually hungry?
yeah.
Just kind of looking and working at it with it differently and giving it some love and grace and stop punishing myself and putting shame around it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think,
Self compassion is huge on any journey.
yeah, with anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
I also never, I mean, I just hit 10 years, so that I count, but like, I never counted days. I never, like, if I were to, God forbid, make a different decision tomorrow, I would just see people that were like, I lost my 20 years. I'm like, you didn't lose anything. You lost a day, like a
Yeah.
decision. Doesn't have to, you don't lose all that time because you accrued something. So I also never like bought into that. You said something else about grief too. You
Mm,
know, that what you saw didn't really fit. I felt the same way about AA. Like it just didn't fit
mm.
me. So I love that we have all these communities and opportunities for different kinds of support because we're all different people. We all process differently.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because my dad was an alcoholic. So at one point I went to, it's like AA, but it's like
Al-Anon.
children of
Yeah.
alcoholics or whatever. And I went to one of those and I'm like, yeah, same thing. It's like, I could
Yeah.
see how it would be helpful for people, but it just wasn't
Sure.
for me. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have something coming up right now. Uh, oh, actually, you just released it, right? What's your program that you just released?
It's a people pleasing masterclass. It's called From People Pleasing to Powerhouse. And it's all about beliefs because I think as people pleasers, we have certain beliefs that aren't true. So, for example, it's selfish to say no, or my
Mm,
worth comes from what I do. And so, this masterclass, it's basically about a 60-minute recording. So, you can go at your own pace and it goes into three different limiting beliefs that people pleasers have, and basically pointing out that they are simply beliefs, they're not facts, and ways that you can reframe it. And I give actionable steps that you can take in your day to day life to start overcoming these beliefs. And again, change can be hard and implementing new things can be hard. So for each lesson, I also have a short list of quick wins because that helps build your confidence and motivation when you are building new habits and building new beliefs in your life. So for each lesson, there's quick wins and actual steps you can take. And I'm super excited about the timing because I think everybody tends to have New Year's resolutions and we
yeah.
all struggle with people pleasing. Because even I still call myself a recovering people pleaser. I'm probably like an 8.5 out of 10 at this point, which is great because I used to have 0 boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think it's an ongoing process because again, like, I think I'll always have those tendencies, and that's okay. It's just how I respond to it, and again, how I reframe and reprogram these beliefs around
Right.
it. And
Even
that's
like the people, like you mentioned, the people you surround yourself with or the situations that you let yourself be part of too.
yeah.
I think, that can help let stop the complete slide back into a pattern that wasn't healthy.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, especially when you start setting boundaries or you do start saying no. you'll start to see very quickly who was taking advantage of you not having
Yeah.
boundaries, because there will be a few people, and I hate to say that, but it's true.
It is. It's yeah, it's very revealing. It
Yeah.
feels so uncomfortable. Like, what do you think at its core people pleasing really is? Like, because you had mentioned you didn't believe that you were worthy of love. Do you think that's like at its very basic core why we do that?
Yeah, I think the core is self-worth, and I do address this in the masterclass because even calling it a people-pleasing masterclass made me nervous because when I was like a textbook definition people pleaser, I didn't even resonate with that term because it brought up so much shame, but that's because my
Mhm.
self-worth was so low. So I kind of hesitated to call it even calling it a people pleaser class, and I mentioned that in the introduction, like if you do feel shame around it, like, that's okay because it's like you're just running on your automatic program. The whole point of the masterclass is to rewrite that program. And I can't go into everybody's situation because ultimately I do think it is based on self-worth. But if you can at least get some of these behaviors in action in your life, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. I love what you were saying about like being so grounded within yourself because I have spun and spun and spun when I didn't have that inner connection and that confidence and that grounding. I was, how many self-help books did I read and,
Yeah.
people's podcasts that I listened to, like desperately searching for why did something still not sit right? What was it? Because I couldn't quite pinpoint it. Do you see that a lot with people? Just something's wrong. And it didn't have the world didn't blow up. There wasn't they just feel off. There's something missing.
I see that all the time, and I have compassion for it because I was like that too. And there's like a blurb on my website, like, if you've read the self help books, if you've done the spiritual practice and you still feel like something's missing, this is for you. Because if you don't trust yourself, because another core pillar of my program is intuition,
Yeah.
because when you don't have self worth, you're not connected to your intuition, you're not trusting to yourself, so you're always reaching for answers outside of yourself. If you can't make decisions, you have to ask friends, and your friends may know you, but nobody knows you like you know you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I always just kind of like talk, and I don't mean to offend people because horoscopes can be valuable, but there are some people who like, my chart says this, so I have to do that,
Right.
and I can't do this because it's Mercury retrograde. And they're so fixated on these things outside of themselves. If you're using the things outside of yourself with discernment, that's totally fine. Because I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with asking a friend, like, hey, I made this decision. What do you think? But you have to use discernment with the feedback. But when you are connected, because everybody has intuition and it's so magical because it's like who you are and it's your own guidance system. And when you're plugged into your own magic, you don't need answers from anyone else because you can just connect to yourself and do what feels right to you. And that's just it because it's a feeling. And that's what I talk about in my people pleaser masterclass because it's like if you're saying yes when you want to say no, it feels like shit because it's not aligned with who you are. So my point is like if you aren't connected to your intuition or you don't even know anything about it, just follow the feeling because you will feel
Mm.
it if you are acting in alignment with who you are and making decisions with who you are and if you're not.
Right. It's that like trusting your gut. If someone's not so familiar with intuition or higher
Yeah.
self or any of that inner connection, I think that the gut feeling is pretty universal and usually like a gateway to like, actually, I
Yeah.
can talk to myself and ask myself these questions and I don't have to ask 47 of my friends and drive them
Yeah.
crazy before I make a decision. You talk about blind spots too. I mean, I guess this is sort of along the same question. How does someone start to see them?
I think the best way is to work with someone else, whether it's a therapist or coach, because even with all the inner work that I've done, sometimes I don't see them in myself. And then I talk to someone else, and then immediately it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because it's so hard to be an objective observer in your own life. You can do it. And I've learned to do that. But you can't always, especially if there's emotional intensity around the subject. You cannot 100% of the time be an objective observer in your own life. So, even
Right.
if you have done a lot of inner work on yourself and you don't necessarily need a coach or therapist, even talking to a trusted friend who can give you honest and loving feedback would be very helpful.
Yeah, because I guess I think what makes them so hard to spot is usually they're things that you don't think are wrong. Like they
Yeah.
were taught to you, they're so ingrained to you, whether it's something cultural or familial and learned, but they're hard to see because you don't identify them as a problem until somebody else helps you dig in. And then you're like, oh, that is a problem.
I actually just had something come up recently. I was doing work on my money mindset. And keep in mind, I've done a ton of inner work. I've also done some specific work on money mindset. But I was taking this course, and at the beginning, we had to write down all of our beliefs and stories. And then there were exercises to go through and reprogram those beliefs. And there
Yeah,
was one that was, if I have money, it's taking away from someone else, because that's what my mom, that was like her belief. And I knew
right.
that's where it came from. And I kept seeing it on the list, but I kept ignoring it. Every day when we did an exercise, I would pick something else because I would see that one and I would be like, that's my mom's belief. I know I don't really believe that. And one night I had a dream, and I was somewhere and there was a cashier, and I gave her money, and then she gave me some money in return, and I didn't want to accept it. And she said to me, she's like, you having this money doesn't take it away from someone else. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I have to do this belief. And so then I did that
Oh,
belief, and like all this stuff came up. So that was like a blind spot that I had, because I was like, oh, I know that's not true. I know that's my mom's, but like I hadn't really worked all the way through it. And luckily I
yeah.
had that dream, because it would have just kept being a blind spot.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. It's so funny how like the universe sort of
I
conspires to like open us up a little more. I had a person in my life was not making bad choices, but just wasn't seeing the light at the end of the tunnel that she like the path she needed to take. She kept like, no, 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 it's over here, like trying to, jam this square peg into a round hole. And one of my friends is a psychic medium, and she happened to be doing a reading for me. And she said, your grandmother's telling me that this girl is doing all these things and she knows what she's supposed to do, but she's not doing it. So your grandma's going to stir the pot a little bit and make things a little difficult so that she has to go in that direction. And I was like, oh, I hate when they do stuff like that.
know they do it though.
I know it's good for us, but um, where at the day's end, like, what are we really striving for? Our best, happiest life? Like, what is the goal that we're trying to achieve?
I don't think the journey ever ends, but I think at the end of the day, if you are proud of yourself and living in integrity and like truly feel happy with who you are as a person, that is success in life.
Yeah. What has been your experience working with people? Like, do you have one story that just like warms your heart so much, somebody's transformation?
Well, I have one. Her maiden name is actually Light, and we were working together, and then she started to feel her inner light, and then she was like, I don't think I ever told you this, but my the name I was born with is Light. And she was like, I'm like, I don't know, it like made her identify with her name because she was
Oh,
feeling that light inside of herself. And again, it's the transformation is that feeling, because it's just like you're just so full of your own self-love, and it's such an amazing feeling. So like to get someone else to that point just felt really good.
yeah. Get them into their inner glow and really
Yeah.
have that shine. Because I feel like when I think about why I'm here on this earth, we all have like, I believe we all have a mission and a purpose. And, I think people like you, like me, if I could see someone be a better person, be happier, they're going to, kind of create that ripple effect of the next person they see, they're going to smile and that person's going to have a better day because of it. And you're just emanating this inner light and letting that shine and becoming beacons all over the place so that we can just see that spread everywhere is feels very much a mission that I feel and also see so many other people like really leaning into.
I 100% agree, because I mentioned before, like when you feel that in yourself, and then the people immediately outside of you can feel it, but on a much higher level, I'm of the mindset you're either, because there's a lot of fear, propaganda, and anger going on right now. So you're either
Yeah.
contributing to that vibration of the universe, or you're contributing to raising the vibration of the universe. And there's so much bullshit going on right now. And at an individual level, it's like I can't go stop a war or stop something horrible from happening, but at an individual level, I can keep my vibration high and spread that love because it does make a difference. I know it feels like picking up litter when, you're just picking up a few things and there's so much more, but it really does make a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, you can even feel it on, a small scale. If you're in a room with people that are
Yeah.
really low vibe and versus walking into a room where even just one person is just so lit, I mean, it's infectious.
Totally agree. Yeah. So, I mean, that is success, right? I want to be the person who walks in the room and changes the whole vibe in a good way.
Yes. I love that. What is one thing that somebody can do that can help lift their vibe? Because obviously, like, in the age of toxic positivity, we have to acknowledge that we're not always feeling like our best selves. But, acknowledging that feeling, living in that has its purpose, but also then removing yourself from it at some point and deciding, okay, I'm going to change, I'm going to shift. What is something that someone can do that can help raise their vibe in a very kind of low effort way that they can do quickly?
This is what I always do because I used to, and this started when I worked in corporate America, because I would roll out of bed exhausted. So then my immediate thoughts were like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to work. And so that became a habit for me. And so even when I started coaching and was more aligned with what I wanted to be doing, I still had that habit. I would get out of bed and it was just all these negative thoughts. And so one day I was like, I need to make a change. I can't keep doing this. So I immediately, and I know this sounds simplistic, but trust me, it works. I immediately get out of bed and I tell myself, I'm choosing to be happy. I'm choosing to be in a good mood. And I immediately put in my earbuds and I listen to, there's this girl on YouTube. Her handle is, I think it's High Frequency Guru, but
Ooh.
she has subliminals, but I like to listen to the rampages because they actually have words. And it's basically like positive affirmations, but when you're in that like half asleep state, it really starts sinking into your head. And like after even a few days, even just like listening to it puts me in a better mood because it's like, yeah, I am gonna like rock this day out. I am gonna get new clients today. And so I know it sounds simplistic, but it really does work. It just takes a few days to like really let it,
Settle in.
yeah.
I love that one. So we'll add that to our digital lift kit and make sure that it's attributed to you. So we talked about the program. What's your website, or where do you hang out on social? Because I feel like even more than a website, that's a great way to meet you, understand what you talk about, what you share.
No, agree. Because I feel like there's more, like, obviously, if someone's listening to this, they probably get a sense of who I am, but there's just more topics on social media. So both my Instagram and YouTube handles where I'm most active are Angie Hawkins 808. And my website is runninginslippers.com, which is also the name of my book. So there is information about my book. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and audiobook, and it is narrated by me.
Oh,
And
good.
yes, and there's also information on my coaching program. Again, it is called Shine from the Inside. So if you are someone who gives away your power and feels exhausted all the time and you feel like there's something more, trust me, there is. And even if you don't feel worthy of it, you are worthy and it is available to you. And I do offer a free 60-minute Find Your Glow session, which is a good chunk of time. So again, the first step in my glow method is go back to your childhood. I can't guarantee a breakthrough, but everybody does have a breakthrough because that's a good amount of time to actually like dig into your childhood and figure out where your beliefs and behaviors are coming from. So that way, by the end of the call, I can give you recommendations for going forward because my program is not for everyone. So if it's not for you, there's no pressure, but the whole goal is to get you help because I know other coaches and therapists that I could refer you to.
Oh, that's amazing. What a beautiful gift. Well, Angie, thank you so much for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure having you here. I hope you enjoy some surfing later. And I will have all your links in the show notes. Everyone go check out Angie, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.